Liam's emergence from the operating theater was nothing short of miraculous. Surgeons declared the procedure an unequivocal success, and whispers in the corridors of Forrester Creations spoke of renewed hope, as though fate had finally granted him a reprieve. Yet the faint tremor in his hand, the pallor of his skin even beneath the bright hospital lights, suggested this might be his swan song rather than a fresh beginning, leading some to murmur that the triumph was merely the final gasp before tragedy struck. In the hush of his recovery room, monitors beeped insistently, nurses hovered anxiously, and only Luna's grieving eyes hinted at the storm brewing behind those steady beeps. Eyes that, soon enough, closed forever, leaving a void so vast that no words could fill it. To the public, Luna's death was a cruel twist of fate, a collateral casualty of a world where love and vengeance clash in jagged, unpredictable ways. To many, it felt like the price paid for Liam's survival, as if Luna's final breath had been drawn so that he might draw another. Yet beneath the veneer of mourning and whispered condolences lay a darkness no one suspected. Luna had not orchestrated her own demise to protect Liam, nor had she stumbled into the crossfire as an innocent. The true architect, the puppeteer pulling strings in the shadows, was someone who had worn the mask of victimhood more convincingly than anyone dared imagine. Sheila, whose very name once evoked pity and scorn in equal measure, had perfected the art of deception. After serving time for crimes we thought buried in the past, she re-emerged under the guise of brokenness, adopting the role of fragile bystander, a woman damaged by Bill Spencer's machinations and desperate for solace. Her story of wrongful imprisonment, her tear-soaked recounting of abandonment, even her trembling apology to Liam for Luna's fate, all were calculated strokes on a canvas of revenge. It was Sheila who had orchestrated the ambush that sent Liam's body sprawling across the roadway, the gunshot tearing through his jacket and grazing his side, leaving him teetering on the brink of death. At the moment of impact, when his vision blurred and blood seeped into the sterile hospital sheets, Sheila vanished into the labyrinth of corridors, her purpose fulfilled, her mask intact. Luna stepped into the breach, professing love and sacrifice, drawing the world's attention away from the truth and onto herself, where it would stay until the final act of this macabre drama. In the hushed intervals between night and dawn, when only the hum of the HVAC and distant footfalls disrupted the stillness, Sheila enacted her final betrayal. Disguised as one of the attending physicians, she navigated the antiseptic corridors with the confidence of someone reclaiming stolen territory, her blue scrubs tailored to conceal the cunning that lay beneath. Decades spent as a nurse had honed her understanding of anatomy and pharmaceuticals, and she wielded that knowledge like a surgeon's scalpel. As Liam's life support flickered, she approached his bedside under the pretense of adjusting his foreline, her gloved hands moving with practiced ease. With a subtle sleight of hand, she introduced a potent cocktail into his infusion bag, a mixture guaranteed to induce a catastrophic seizure. No one in the bustling ward noticed the slight change in fluid clarity, the momentary hesitation in the line's drip rate, or the minute fleck of undissolved particles drifting in the otherwise pristine saline. By the time Bill Spencer burst into the room, alarmed by a terse page and followed by the chaotic arrival of code blue nurses, it was already too late. Liam's body convulsed violently, his airway constricting, and within seconds, the monitors flatlined, the red line morphing into eternal stillness. Bill crumpled to his knees, disbelief etched into every line of his face, screaming questions into the sterile air that swallowed them whole. Now, as Forrester Creations and Spencer Publications reel from the shock, one question dominates every whispered conversation in hushed boardroom corners and behind closed doors. Will Bill discover the hidden surveillance footage that could unmask the true perpetrator? Security cameras line the hospital's hallways like silent sentinels, their lenses recording each footstep and furtive glance. If Bill can locate the footage from the corridor just outside Liam's room, footage that captures the figure in scrubs slipping away moments before the seizure, then Sheila's elaborate masquerade will unravel, exposing the depths of her vendetta. Everyone wonders whether he will pull every string in his formidable empire to gain access, or whether Sheila's experience with manipulation has already obscured her tracks beyond recovery. As the city buzzes with speculation and hearts break for the fallen heir of Spencer Blood, the legacy of betrayal casts a long shadow. In a world where trust is as fragile as glass, the brightest victories can herald the darkest reversals, and the final frames of a life can be rewritten by the most unexpected hand. Bill Spencer sat in total darkness, the glow of his phone screen the only light in the cavernous study. His heart pounded so fiercely in his chest that he feared the veneer of glass on the display would crack beneath the force. He had watched the grainy security footage over and over, each time noticing new details: the purposeful cadence of Sheila's steps, the cold curve of her silhouette in scrubs, the way her gloved hand hovered over the bag before tilting it ever so slightly. He saw the moment her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, a smile that was meant only for her, an unspoken victory dance at the thought of his son's desperate seizures. Fury, like molten steel, coursed through his veins. He felt the floor tilt beneath him as grief and rage merged into a single, implacable will. Liam was gone, and the law could not resurrect him, but Bill could ensure that the architect of his death would never harm another soul. He pocketed his phone and rose, each footstep echoing in the silent hallway as his mind raced through every detail he had collected: the precise timestamp, the angle of the hallway camera, the unmistakable profile of Sheila's hairline even beneath the scrub cap. Arrest would be too kind. Prison would grant her the same stale air she had once inhaled when Bill himself had engineered her downfall years ago. No, this time justice would wear a darker face Bill's own. He moved with predatory calm, reconciling every piece of evidence. Payment records for off-book hospital bribes, a dried smear of Linda's lipstick on the inside cuff of a lab coat that matched Sheila's alternating disguise, witness testimony from a flustered orderly who'd glimpsed a woman in a hurry slipping down the hall. By dawn, he had obtained a copy of the footage from the hospital's security chief, an old friend indebted to Spencer Publications. He had traded favors, pulled strings, and extracted confessions until the truth stood clear and undeniable. Now all he needed was the moment. Bill's office, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the LA skyline, felt suddenly claustrophobic. He pressed his palms into the dark wood desk, as if to steady himself against the tidal wave of vengeance swelling inside him. In that moment, the businessman, the magnate, the public face of a media empire faded, replaced by a father whose capacity for love had transmuted into a capacity for wrath. Sheila, of course, thought she had vanished successfully into the undergrowth of the city, a phantom nursing old grievances. She would not suspect her murderer to be the man she had long plotted against. She would expect betrayal from a rival or perhaps a hired gun. Not this. A personal reckoning delivered at the hands of the very father whose life she had upended. Bill reached for his phone and scrolled to the contacts list, finding the number he needed. One that did not bear the name of a lawyer or a law enforcement official, but that of a man he once met at a discreet golf tournament in Pebble Beach, someone who operated well outside the constraints of civilized society. A single call, a single instruction. I have a job for you. One target. No witnesses. He paused, finger hovering over the dial, letting the enormity of his decision settle into the marrow of his bones. Then he pressed call. As the phone rang, Bill closed his eyes and imagined the moment the assassin would find Sheila, wherever she hid. He pictured her startled gasp, the betrayal in her eyes when she realized her prison walls would no longer be made of steel bars, but of irreversible finality. He envisioned the moment she would slip from life to death, her vendetta extinguished by the very hands she sought to destroy. And in that instant, he vowed that he would watch the world breathe easier, knowing his son's murderer would never again taste freedom. The phone clicked, a single line answered, and Bill Spencer, grieving father and newly crowned avenger, spoke the words that would set his plan into motion. "It's done." Then he hung up, the echo of his own whispered promise reverberating through the silent study. Outside, the sun rose over the city, indifferent to human schemes, but within Bill's heart a darker dawn had broken, one that would end only when Sheila finally paid the price he deemed righteous. The dawn that broke over Los Angeles carried a hollow promise of renewal, but for Sheila it brought only mounting dread. She'd taken to hiding in a shabby motel on the outskirts of town, the paint on the door peeling like old skin, the carpet frayed and stained. Just another anonymous face in a sea of secrets. Each morning, she forced herself out of bed, patched together a disguise, a wig pulled low over her brow, dark glasses clipped to the bridge of her nose, a thrift store trench coat cinched at the waist, and ventured into the daylight to procure groceries, change cash for untraceable bills, and slip into bustling crowds where no one would notice the tremor in her hands. Yet every footstep echoed in her mind, every shadow seemed to stretch after her with murderous intent. She couldn't shake the sick certainty that her past had finally caught up to her, that the crime she had once committed in cold, calculated malice had summoned a vengeance far greater than any prison sentence. Bill Spencer's web had closed tighter than she imagined. The hitman he'd hired, a silent specter whose service moved with near supernatural efficiency. He had studied Sheila's patterns, the route she walked to the tiny corner market, the brief layover at a bus stop beneath a flickering street lamp, the one cafe she allowed herself to frequent when desperation demanded a hot cup of coffee. At each juncture, he waited, crouched behind a dumpster, perched on a bench with a newspaper obscuring his face, sharpening the blade of a switchblade in the muted light of an alley. His patience matched Bill's fury. He understood that this assignment was not about money, but about settling an ancient debt soaked in grief and rage. On the third day, as Sheila slipped out to buy bread, she felt an inexplicable chill trail down her spine. The morning air was crisp, the sky an unbroken blue, yet something felt fractured, a presence she could neither see nor name. She paused beneath the neon sign of the bakery, head cocked, listening to the hum of traffic. Then she saw him. A man leaning against a fire hydrant, hands shoved into the pockets of a leather jacket, gaze fixed on her with the detached cool of a predator sizing up prey. Time slowed, her breath caught in her throat. In that moment, every lie she'd ever told, every secret she'd buried in the dark, seemed to congeal into a single crystalline truth. This was the reckoning she'd tried so hard to outrun. Sheila turned on her heel and ran, heart pounding like a war drum, the loaf of bread smashing against her hip as she pelted down the sidewalk. Behind her, he moved with silent grace, gaining on her with each measured stride. The city around them carried on indifferently, morning commuters checking their phones, a jogger looping the block, the clatter of a bus pulling away. Yet for Sheila the world had narrowed to the sound of her own terrified panting and the steady thump of his approach. She darted into a narrow alleyway, hoping to lose him among the stacked pallets and overflowing dumpsters, but the assassin anticipated her every turn, stepping through the gloom like a shadow of death itself. They came face to face beneath a flickering security light. Sheila, breathless and wild-eyed, pressed her back against the corrugated metal wall, fingers scrabbling for anything that could serve as a weapon. He stopped barely an arm's length away, the blade glinting in his hand. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the distant wail of a siren broke the silence. Then, just as he raised the switchblade, Sheila did something wholly unexpected. She laughed, a harsh, rattling cackle born of terror and defiance. The sound startled him, fractured his professional calm, and in that split second of hesitation, Sheila seized her chance. With fierce adrenaline coursing through her veins, she leapt forward and drove her elbow into his sternum, knocking the wind out of him, then smashed the loaf of bread against his temple. He staggered, clutching his head, and she bolted past him, racing out of the alley and into the bloodstream of the city. By the time the hitman recovered, Sheila had vanished like smoke. She didn't stop running until she reached the highway overpass that overlooked the glowing sprawl of LA. There, she collapsed against the chain-link fence, chest heaving, sun beating down on her shaking shoulders. She had beaten death, at least for now, but every fiber of her being cried out that Bill Spencer's wrath would not be quenched by a single failed attempt. As sirens closed in on the alley where the wounded hitman lay, she knew that this narrow escape was but one battle in a war she was destined to lose. Yet in the hollow of her fear, a new resolve began to take shape. If Bill wanted blood, she would make him pay in ways he could never imagine. Back in his penthouse office, Bill paced like a caged beast, phone pressed to his ear as he demanded answers. The hitman's voice, ragged and terse, confirmed the job's failure. She got away. Barely. She's still out there. Bill slammed his fist against the desk so hard that the glass tabletop vibrated. Rage roared through him once more, but this time it was tinged with a new emotion, respect, grudging, and dangerous. Sheila had fought back. She had survived. Bill realized with sudden clarity that his son's killer was no helpless victim, but a formidable adversary who thrived in shadows. And as he stared out at the city that had borne witness to his triumphs and tragedies, he made a choice that would change everything. This war would not end with one death, but many. And this time, he would not delegate. He would see to it himself.